Jefferson County will take the stage.
I'm Dr. Orletta Rush, Deputy Superintendent with Jefferson County School District. It is a pleasure and an honor to be here with all of the federal program gurus in the room. You are so needed in all of our school districts. I am so honored to work with my federal programs director, Ms. Janet Haygood. She keeps us all straight and on the narrow. As I was listening to the keynote speaker this morning, everything that was being said resonated with me from the work that we do with her, and I know you do that same work in your districts as well. So just know how much you are appreciated, because we would not be able to be successful with the things we do for the students every day without your support, help, and money. With that being said, we've been very blessed in our federal area with funding to be able to do a lot of things that we see the needs are for within Jefferson County. Jefferson County is the second largest school district in the state of Alabama, housing over 35,000 plus students. We have almost over 9,000 exceptional education students that come in there with an array of backgrounds, and we have about 37 schools that are title schools within our school district out of 56. So with that being said, we have a lot of things to turn every day as a school district. And with those things, we had to look at, especially after coming off of COVID, looking at what we could do that would best help and support our students academically. We know that there are so many problems, and a lot of times we can get bogged down with looking at all the problems and trying to solve them. But as a district, we decided to look at things and see how we could streamline those things to be able to support and help each individual schools. You know, a lot of times they say when you do the same thing over and over, you're going to get the same results. So what we decided to do was to stop looking at the schools to provide us what they're going to do, and as a district to provide them what we were going to do to help them in school improvement. And this is where our Office of School Improvement was developed. It was formed, and with the help of Mr. Scott Mohan, who is our Director of Assessment and Accountability, along with Counseling and School Improvement. Dr. Kenya Hall, who is one of our specialists here, and Mrs. Jackie Beeman, also in school improvement. Dr. Hall would talk to us today because she is the guru behind our partnership with Cognia. However, she has lost her voice, so we're going to do the best we possibly can to support her and provide you with all of that knowledge. So with that being said, we decided as a district to serve and lead intentionally and purposefully, and was driven to continuous improvement. We know with COVID, it did a tremendous amount of damage academically to all of our students. And what we had to do was look holistically and see how we could move forward and provide an exit strategy and provide the support that we needed to be able to do so. Our driving force in Jefferson County is our strategic plan. Our strategic plan is our roadmap as a district. We utilize our strategic plan in looking at the 5 pillars: our governance and leadership, teaching and learning, facilities and support systems, communication and collaboration, and also continuous improvement. This is our roadmap to whatever we do. We take it back to our strategic plan at all times. Our superintendent, Dr. Walter Gonsolin, challenged us to look at it as a pocket plan, to also make sure that everything that we do connects back to it. So therefore, we're not kind of driving all over the place. We're following the roadmap that we have for success in our district. So as you can see, the largest part that we have there that was a strong focus for school improvement was the teaching and learning area and the continuous improvement area. Those locked hand in hand in what we needed to provide, looking at our students and how we could be more successful. The continuous improvement priority areas of focus. What we decided to do was target our support, and we targeted our support with continuous improvement framework. We looked at the support and the focus of our priority schools, and this was a priority school kind of designated within us. I know our state has a listing of priority schools that they do, but we as a district decided to look at our students and look at our schools and provide that support for them as well. So before that listing of priority schools were pushed out, we dug deeply into the data to be able to look at what our schools were really doing and what it was truly saying about the academic well-being of the students there. So looking at that, we decided to give full support, looking at our ATSI students, our CSI schools, our full support schools, our EL students, and any school that had a D or an F on the state report card. This was our targeted support, and this was the area that we were looking for to be able to streamline more efforts to be able to bring these students up to an average or continue to show the growth that was there. We had accountability that was placed, that was there for Jefferson County. Again, a lot of times we can look at the data, we can say all of the wonderful things that we're going to do, but if there's no accountability that is put in place, it kind of sits on a shelf and just becomes a document that is there. So what we did was be very intentional with what we were doing. We created a Jefferson County framework for continuous improvement. We looked at the progress monitoring of a school level district with continuous improvement plans. And we partner there with diagnostic review. And you're going to see that one of our big partnerships was with Cognia and being able to provide that diagnostic review, bringing a third party in to be able to look at what we're doing in the district, and then we plan accordingly with accountability moving forward from the information that we receive from them. Now, this time, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Scott Mohan, who is the Director of Accountability and Assessment with School Improvement, and he's going to talk about our Jefferson County Improvement Framework.
Yep. Thanks, Dr. Rush. Good morning. Y'all been sitting for a while. Everybody's still excited to be here. So, as Dr. Rush mentioned, my name is Scott Mohan. I'm the Director of Assessment, Accountability, and Student Support Services for Jefferson County. School Improvement is one of the divisions that falls under my umbrella. No, we've already given a shout out to Dr. Hall. Kenya, raise your hand. Ms. Beeman, raise your hand. So these are two of our school improvement specialists in Jefferson County. We have one more team member who's back in the district working today, and her name is Miss Brittany Wilder. I would be remiss if I didn't give a second shout out to Miss Haygood. I cannot begin to tell you the impact that Janet and her department has had over our entire district, but specifically under the departments that I'm responsible for. So her department funds, I think, about 12 or 13 of our school counselors. So those schools that might not earn a full unit, she's funding those. She has funded 4 or 5 of our school social workers, which essentially allowed us to create a new mental health department in our district. And she just funded 4 behavior interventionists that we're getting ready to add to our district. So without question, we could not do what we do without her department, and her support. And I know you do the same thing for your schools back in your district. So thank you so much for all that you do. With that being said, I want to talk to you a little bit about our district's journey with school improvement, and I'm going to be very transparent with you about some of the things that have led us to where we are now. We had somewhat of an aligning of the stars a couple of years ago. We had just finished revising our strategic plan, which Dr. Rush showed you just a little bit ago. And of course, in that strategic plan, one of our big pillars is continuous improvement. Around the same time that we were finishing our strategic plan, we had, quite frankly, some unfortunate news in that 5 of our high schools were identified as failing schools under the Alabama Accountability Act. And for us, you know, we all have those kind of come to Jesus, oh my gosh moments. For our district, that was one of those moments. We literally kind of all looked at each other and kind of said, what are we going to do? And that's exactly what our superintendent charged us with. hey, we've got to do something. What we've been doing is not working. We've got to rethink what we're doing in terms of school improvement. Again, to be very transparent with you, our district is not unlike some of your districts. We were doing school improvement in the sense that we were checking all of the boxes and meeting all of the compliance requirements. But when it came right down to it, we probably really weren't doing school improvement. We had Dr. Hall, so at the time, Dr. Hall was our one and only person in a district of 58 schools, almost 36,000 kids. Dr. Hall was our one and only person doing school improvement. And for all intents and purposes, her job was literally just to make sure everybody had an ASIP. We couldn't really provide feedback to the schools. We couldn't really effectively monitor what they were doing, how they were doing it. Was it working? Was it not working? She was literally just trying to keep her head above water. And so 2 years ago, when Dr. Gonsolin charged us with doing something different, Dr. Rush and I literally, over the course of 2 or 3 weeks, locked ourselves in our offices and basically took the opportunity to re-envision what school improvement looks like in Jefferson County. And our charge, not only from Dr. Gonsolin, but from us as well, was if we were going to re-envision what school improvement looks like, how would we do it? What would it look like? What resources would be required? What would be our theory of action? And so over the course of a couple of weeks, we did everything from thinking about resources, personnel, what it would look like for schools. But the first thing we did, and to this day, the most important thing that we did, is that we developed our own framework. We developed our theory of action. And the reason that was so important is because prior to this, when it came time for schools to write their improvement plans, we would literally tell schools, you gotta have a reading goal, you gotta have a math goal, and you gotta have a third goal. Whatever you wanna write, that's fine with us. And while we were checking the boxes, we were not intentional about giving schools guidance and support and providing that structure for helping them understand what to do in order to improve. I don't know if we've got any ARI friends or any OMI friends in the room with us this morning, but we knew we had to move away from solely focusing on improving reading scores and math scores. Our philosophy of school improvement is that low reading scores, low math scores, heck, low graduation rates, low CCR rates, all of those are symptoms of a bigger issue, of a bigger problem. And so we took the opportunity to take a step back and start thinking about, hey, what are some of those foundational pieces that have to be right, in the school in order for reading scores to improve, in order for math scores to improve, in order to have, high CCR and graduation rates. And so when we took that opportunity to take a step back and think about all of those contributing factors, those core conditions that when you get them right, schools can't help but to succeed and to do well. And so that's how our framework evolved. So we identified 4 critical foundational pieces that made up our framework. So you've got our framework here up on the screen. So starting with leadership, right? Everything starts with leadership. And so that was our first pillar. And so then as a school improvement team, we identified some specific priorities. So under that leadership pillar, what are some specific things under leadership that if schools get those things right, they're going to improve. And so we talked about things like how leadership really drives the improvement effort and sets the tone for the improvement effort. We talked about distributed leadership and how it's not just up to the principal or the assistant principal to drive the improvement effort. So we talked about how to empower teachers and teacher leaders and other leaders in the building to kind of carry the torch forward. Our second pillar, and I always say this every time I get a chance to talk about our framework, our second pillar is culture and climate. I would argue with you, not saying I'm right, because you might make a good case otherwise, but I would argue with you that culture and climate is the single most important determining factor in the success of students in your buildings. And so that was a critical piece for our framework, is that schools have to get their culture and climate right. An improvement mindset is not just something that's there. So that's a piece of culture and climate, getting everyone on board and getting everyone to believe in the ability to improve and for the school to get better. We talked about how we support students. We talked about how we support teachers, and do teachers and students want to come to school? What does student engagement look like? And so all of those things under that culture and climate piece became very, very important, and really every time we meet, either with our schools or even as a school improvement team, culture and climate is the one piece that always rises to the top as something that we've got to get right. So obviously, of course, we talked about teaching and learning in our framework. We talked about student engagement as a piece of that, and how do we get students engaged in the process of their learning. We asked our schools to focus on what they're doing around intervention and enrichment. Things like that. A lot of our teachers, well, maybe not fair, some of our teachers really needed to develop a growth mindset in helping students move forward, even not only our lowest achieving students, but our highest achieving students as well. And then our final pillar of our framework, human resources, how we use people, how we get the right people in the right spot on the bus, how we recruit, develop, and retain people, because when you come to Jefferson County, we want to empower you and give you the skills and the abilities, because we want you to rise through our ranks and stay with us throughout the duration of your career. Also under that human resources pillar, how we hold people accountable and how we recognize people who are doing a great job. And so all of those pieces became really our driving force in terms of everything we do in school improvement. And you'll notice in our framework, at no point do we mention math proficiency or reading proficiency. I always argue to people, if we get these things right, go to a school and show me a school that's doing all of these things right, and I'll show you a high-performing school. And so our belief, our philosophy is that if we get this right, test scores, graduation rates, CCR rates will take care of themselves. So our framework was the first thing, really our driving force behind everything we did. Our superintendent was very gracious and allowed us to repurpose some staff. So suddenly, we actually had a real school improvement department with the individuals that I mentioned earlier. And so then the real work of setting out to serve and support schools began. In a district our size, 58 schools, almost 36,000 kids, we were very acutely aware that we were a limited resource. 3 specialists, 1 director to serve and support 58 schools. And so then it became a process of understanding how we can best support those schools. So very early on, we developed a tiered support structure, with Tier 3 being our schools with either a D or an F on the report card, or 2 years ago identified as a failing school under the Accountability Act. And so those were the schools that first year. I believe we had 11 of them. Is that right? Yep, 11 of them. 13, thanks, Dr. Hall. 13 priority schools our first year, and this was even before the state began identifying priority schools. We identified 13 with either a D or an F or failing under the Accountability Act. And those were the schools that, quite frankly, we got up in their business. Not in a compliance or do this or else mentality, but very much in a partnership and a collaborative effort. We actually started working with those schools before we rolled our school improvement framework out to the rest of the district. So essentially they became our guinea pigs. So we spent a couple of months working with them on understanding the framework and understanding where we were asking them to put their time, energy, and efforts. We also asked them to develop goal action plans, and this became a critical piece of our new improvement process. So the goal action plan, for all intents and purposes, is a scaled down, simple, easy to use improvement plan. So we asked the schools that first year to identify goals, action steps, strategies, and then to begin working their plans. We had a school improvement specialist assigned to each one of those schools. They worked with them almost daily, if not multiple times a week, in assisting them in executing their plans. I'll go ahead and say, even though it's really not at this point in the presentation, a year later we moved 6 of those schools off the priority school list. So we were very, very pleased with the work that they did. This was not something that the district did. This was work that the schools did and really made happen. You can see our Tier 2 schools. So in addition to working very extensively with our Tier 3 schools, we also identified a mid-level of schools that needed support. So those were our schools, TSI, ATSI, where we were still very involved with what they were doing and giving them support, but not quite up to the level and the frequency that we were doing with our Tier 3 schools. And then the following fall, we rolled out, actually this past fall, we rolled out our school improvement model to the rest of our district. And so at this point, every school in our district has a goal action plan. That goal action plan served as the foundation of what eventually became their CIP. That CIP that's created in eProve, the goal action plan essentially was the user-friendly version of that. We post it on our website, we share it with our community stakeholders, and it's just a very user-friendly version of the ACIP. I know you've all seen kind of that visual that we're all familiar with, that cycle of improvement. This is essentially kind of what ours looks like. So you can see that goal action plan that I've already talked about. This is developed by the principal and the leadership team. The second critical piece of this that I've not really talked about yet, that we spent a lot of time working with our Tier 3 schools, is the team action plan. Because you have to have that next level of work. So you've got your big plan that at a high level identifies, hey, here are our goals, here are some of the things that we're going to do, but then the real work starts. And so every school has a team action plan where a specific team takes a goal. So each goal action plan has 3 goals. So every school has 3 action teams, and usually those action teams are made up of different people. And that was by design as well. Again, trying to create distributive leadership within the building and give people additional opportunities to serve. So every school has 3 action teams, and each one of those teams is working on one of the specific goals and kind of fleshing that out and really working their plan. They come back periodically to meet with the school leadership team and keep them updated on their progress and the work that they're doing. The schools are very involved in their own progress monitoring, but at the district level, we provide, as I'm sure many of you do, multiple opportunities throughout the year for them to come together. All of the school leadership teams come together, where as a district team, we meet with them. They present their plans, we provide feedback, they decide what's working, what's not working, and decide what their next steps are. So I'm not going to get into the weeds with you here because I know we're starting to run short on time, but if this is something that at all piques your interest, we're happy to share some of our goal action plans. We're happy to share what some of our team action plans look like as well. We have developed a feedback form to give our school leadership teams feedback about their plans, and for them to give us feedback as well about what's working, what's not working, what they're going to keep, what they're going to punt, and kind of what their next steps are as well. So if that's interesting to you, feel free to reach out to us. We'll share that with you as well. 2 other critical pieces in our process that our superintendent has really pushed us hard to do. So Dr. Gonsolin came to us a couple of years ago with this idea of having a district-wide, I think when he initially said it, he said he just wanted a data book. Scott, I want a data book. He had seen it. I don't know if Tuscaloosa City's in here, but Tuscaloosa City, Dr. G saw your data book and came back and made us do one. So there you go, Tuscaloosa. So came back, said, I want us any and every piece of data that we can imagine, from student achievement to demographics to CCR grad rates, anything you can imagine, I want it in this book. And we're going to share it with our board members, we're going to share it with our stakeholders, we're going to share it with our mayors and city councils, and we did it.